let's talk about the reproduction of the green algae. Okay. So, green algae can reproduce as algae. So, they are lower organisms. So, they can reproduce in 3 different ways. They can reproduce in 3 different ways. One is vegetative, one is asexual, and another is sexual. So, green algae can reproduce in 3 ways. As they are algae, as they are lower organisms, generally we divide their reproduction not in 2 ways rather than in 3 ways. And what are they? They are vegetative, asexual and sexual. So, vegetative process, generally it is done by fragmentation. Generally it is done by fragmentation. Fragmentation. As you can see here, a word is present, fragment. So, generally from one fragment, they have the potential to completely produce the proper or the complete plant body. The single fragment has the potential to produce the complete plant body. So, that is called your fragmentation process. It is a vegetative process. And how it is done and why it is done, the vegetative or the fragmentation process? For some accidental case, for example, the plant breaks by some accidental water currents or by the predators, and the filament is separated, each filament is separated, each filament of the algae or each vegetative part of the algae is separated. So, that vegetative part has the potential to grow into a complete plant body. So, that is called your fragmentation process. So, let us look into the asexual process. Generally, the asexual process is carried out by the means of the spores. Generally, the asexual process is carried out by the means of spores, by spores. As you know that spores, they can be your motile form and they can be in your non-motile form. The spores, they can be in your motile form and they can be in your non-motile form. The motile form have a name. The motile form has a name and that is your zoospore. The non-motile form has also a name, that is your aplanospore or planospore. Take it as planospore. Planospore. Okay. So, asexual reproduction process is carried out by the spores. Asexual reproduction process is carried out generally by the means of spores, and those spores, they might be motile, okay, they might be motile or they might be non-motile. The motile form has a name, that is zoospore. The non-motile form has also a name, that is planospore or aplanospore you can say, and this motile form is generally produced, in favorable conditions or in favorable seasons. Let us take favorable conditions. What is favorable condition? In lower organisms, what is favorable condition? Favorable conditions in lower organism, it means their food is present, they do have food, they have a suitable environment, okay, they are living well. So, that is their favorable condition. What is favorable for in case of human being? Just like that, in lower organisms they do have favorable conditions. In our case, in human being, you can say when we are getting proper education, when we are getting proper food, when we have a proper shelter to live with, when we do have clothes, then all those basic necessities when we are fulfilling, food, shelter, clothes as well as education, all 4 basic components when we are acquiring that, then we are living in a favorable condition. Just like that in lower organisms also, when they do have food, when do they have a suitable environment, so that is their favorable conditions. Okay. So, in favorable conditions, motile form is generally seen, motile spores are generally seen, they are your zoospores, and in non-favorable conditions, non-motile spores or aplanospores are generally seen. Okay. So, it is their asexual reproduction process. Then come into their sexual reproduction process. Then come into algae's sexual reproduction process. And sexual reproduction process, it means asexual means without the involvement of sex organs. It means a single plant body is enough for the reproduction of the next generation or the daughter cells. But in sexual reproduction, involvement of the sex organs or gametes is essential. So, sexual reproduction is carried out by gametes. Clear? First, look about the vegetative reproduction usually takes place by the fragmentation process. So, what is fragmentation process? Here you can see a word fragment is there. Fragment is there. It means from a single fragment the plant body can be produced. The whole or the total plant body can be produced. And why this fragmentation process happened? Why do this fragmentation process occur? Because for some reason, due to accidental breakage, or by some predators, okay. For example, due to accidental breakage means by water currents, plant might break. By some predators, when predators pass through the plants, they might break. So, that breakage part has the potential to grow into a complete plant body. Clear? So, this is your fragmentation process or the vegetative reproduction process of the algae. Okay, here it is given. For example, it is a freshwater algae called your Spirogyra. Okay, Spirogyra, they might break into two fragments by some accidental water currents. Okay, and each fragment has the potential to grow into a complete plant body. This is your fragmentation process. Asexual reproduction is by flagellated zoospores produced in zoosporangia. Then it is given your sexual reproduction process. Okay, let's look into this. Okay, asexual reproduction process generally that is done by your spores, and that spores, they might be your motile spores, example your zoospores, and they might be your non-motile spores. They might be your non-motile spores, which is arised in your unfavorable conditions. Clear? So, sexual reproduction shows considerable variation in the type and formation of sex cells. Okay. So, that sexual reproduction, they do have also some variation in the gametes. We know that sexual reproduction is involved by the process of gametes. Okay. Gametes are essential for carrying out the reproduction process, the sexual reproduction process, but that gamete might differ from species to species. Okay. That gamete might differ from species to species. So, that gamete might be your isogamous, that gamete might be your anisogamous, and that gamete might be your oogamous. Okay. And what is isogamous, anisogamous and oogamous? Let's see. Isogamous means, there is a term here, iso. Iso means similar. Iso means similar. And gamous refers to gametes. Gametes. It means in isogamous we see similar gametes. Anisogamous, aniso, here a term is present. Aniso, it means dissimilar, dissimilar. Okay, and gamous refers to your gametes. Okay, gametes. Here oogamous. Here you see that in isogamous similar gametes are found. In anisogamous dissimilar gametes are found. Whether the male is larger or the female is larger. Okay. In oogamous generally oo generally refers to your female. In oogamous generally the female is larger one. Female larger, female gamete is larger, female gamete larger and the male gamete is generally smaller. Male gamete is generally your smaller one. Okay. Female gamete is generally your larger one and male gamete is generally your smaller one. Clear? And how the gametes fuse and what is called and what all those things are called? If isogamous gametes are fused, if isogamous gametes or the similar gametes are fused, those process or that type of fertilization process is called isogamy. Do you know what is gamy? Gamy means fusion. So that type of fertilization is called your isogamy. If anisogametes fuse or dissimilar gametes are fused, that type of process is called your anisogamy or heterogamy. Hetero means also differ. Okay, those gametes completely differ from each other. Hetero. Okay, homo means same and hetero means different. Okay, so anisogamy, oogamy. When the female is larger one, when the female is larger one and the male is smaller one. Okay, female is larger one and the male is smaller one, and when those gametes fuse, then that type of fusion or that type of fertilization process is called your oogamy. So in this way sexual reproduction is carried out in the algae, is done by your algae. Clear? Some commonly found green algae are, some examples of green algae are your Chlamydomonas. Chlamydomonas is one type of unicellular freshwater algae. It is motile, it means they do have flagella. Volvox, it is one type of colonial form of algae. Okay. Chara, okay, Chara, Eulothrix, Spirogyra. Okay, all these are your green algae. Okay, it means they come under the member Chlorophyceae. Spirogyra, I was telling you before that it is one type of freshwater algae. Eulothrix, it is also one type of freshwater algae. Okay, so all these are some examples of your green algae. Chlamydomonas, Chara, Volvox, Spirogyra, Eulothrix, all these are some examples of your green algae. Remember this. Let's look another class of the green algae, that is your Phaeophyceae. Phaeophyceae, generally they are brown algae. Phaeophyceae, generally they are brown algae. Brown algae. Okay, it doesn't mean that they do not have chlorophyll. As they are algae, it means as they are plants, it means they do have chlorophyll. But the fucoxanthin pigment, for which they appear brown in color, it masks or it completely covers other pigments. That's why the algae appear brown in color, because it masks the other pigments. Here you can see it is one type of brown algae which is appearing, you can see it is appearing brown in color. Okay. The members of Phaeophyceae or brown algae are found primarily in marine habitats. I was telling you before that algae are aquatic organisms. Algae are aquatic organisms. When we had studied about their habitat, we had studied that algae are generally the aquatic organisms, but aquatic environment not confined to completely ponds or rivers. It is very vast environment. It is very completely heavy or vast environment. So aquatic environment can be your freshwater environment or it can be your marine habitat. Freshwater or marine habitat. Marine habitat means salt water. Okay, salt water is present there, and there is also a transition zone between freshwater and marine habitat, just like your estuaries. Okay, where fresh water mix with the marine water. Okay, so all the brown algae, they are generally found in the marine habitat or in salt water or in the seas or in the oceans. They are generally found in your marine habitats. Okay, they are not found in the freshwater forms. They are generally found in seas or oceans. Okay, and those brown algae generally they completely bigger than the green algae. Okay, they completely larger than the, comparatively they are larger from the green algae. Okay, they show great variation in size and form. They show great variation in size and form. It means they are completely, their size completely differ from the rest of the algae, from the green algae as well as from the red algae. One algae is there, that is kelp. One algae is there, that is kelp. It is the largest algae. The research is found that they are the largest algae. It means ଯେତେବେଳେ तुम समुद्र तले देखिबो सेठी तुमरो algae पूरा spread हेकी थांती, गोटे सिंगल algae एमती गोटे गोटे जगह नथिबो, से माने पूरा बहुत बड़ ही जानती. तो kelp is also one type of brown algae which is your largest algae they are called. Okay, in brown algae, in their shape we also see some differentiation. Okay, we also see some varieties. It means they do have in simple branched form. Okay, they represent from the simple branched form to the filamentous form, even to the larger algae. So they range from the simple branched filamentous forms. One of the example of the filamentous form is your ectocarpus. Filamentous form, I was giving you example. It means a lot of cells come in a filament like structure. Okay, one is your filament, one cell looks like your filament type of structure. So complete when the all the cells or the multicellular form, they look like completely a long filament like structure, that type of algae is called your filamentous algae. Okay, clear? So one of the filamentous form of the brown algae is your ectocarpus. 2, profusely branched. Profusely branched means profusely branched. You can take your common sense. Profusely branched. You can here just think that what it might be. Profusely branched. Branched, profusely branched. It means, look, it is a branch. Okay, it is a branch of a brown algae. तामाने से जो ब्राउन algae तुम ब्रांच देखुच, एटा जनरली थालस टाइप रो स्ट्रक्चर थांती, सेटा से माने ता भी तो तमरो रूट स्टेम्स और लीव्स आइडेंटिफाई करी हो न थाए, ता माने ता ब्रांच ता तमे आइडेंटिफाई करि परिबोनी कि को जागा रो सेटा फ्यूज हेइ थाए, तो सेति पय कहउची एटा प्रोफ्यूजली ब्रांच्ड फॉर्म ऑफ algae. Okay, forms represented by kelps. Okay, here you can see generally it is appearing green here. Okay, because of the edit, but they are generally brown in color. Okay, kelps. It is one type of brown algae. As you had studied in the previous boards that in green algae they have a pigment that is chlorophyll A and chlorophyll B. That's why they appear grass green in color. So you might be thinking that why the algae are appearing brown in color. Then what pigments do they have in their body? Okay, they are appearing brown in color, but they do have the chlorophyll and they can perform the photosynthesis. Okay, generally the phaeophyci have chlorophyll A, chlorophyll C, carotenoids and xanthophylls. These are extra pigments. Okay, In green algae, I am writing here all the algae pigments. Okay, I am writing here all the algae pigments in a complete chart so that you can remember this. So that you can remember this well. Brown algae, red algae, red algae. Okay, I am writing here in a chart all their pigments they belong. Okay, they do have. Okay, green algae have chlorophyll A, chlorophyll B. Okay, brown algae has chlorophyll A, chlorophyll C. Red algae has chlorophyll A, chlorophyll D. Chlorophyll A is the universal pigment, you can easily recall this. Green algae has chlorophyll B, brown algae has chlorophyll C, red algae has chlorophyll D. Apart from that, what dominant pigment is present all those algae, that's why they are appearing colorful. Okay, for example, in your brown algae, a dominant pigment is present which is fucoxanthin. Apart from that, these carotenoids, beta carotenoids and xanthophylls are also present, but the dominant pigment is your fucoxanthin. Okay, in red algae, the dominant pigment for which they appear red in color, that is your phycoerythrin. Phycoerythrin. How to easily remember this? How to easily remember this? So, first click in your mind that chlorophyll A is completely the universal pigment. So, all those different types of algae has chlorophyll A. Here you sequentially recall that B, let's take another color, B, C, D. Sequentially place there that B, C, D. Okay, you know that chlorophyll A completely take it as a universal pigment, and how we will not confuse there which algae has chlorophyll B, which algae has chlorophyll C and which algae has chlorophyll D. Keep in your mind that B comes first, after that C and after that D, and here in your mind completely pack it that green algae, brown algae, red algae. So, green algae has chlorophyll B, brown algae has chlorophyll C and red algae has chlorophyll D. And you here these two dominant pigments you have to recall that brown algae are dominant pigment which is fucoxanthin, and red algae has a dominant pigment which is your phycoerythrin. Okay, and apart that beta carotene and xanthophylls are also present in brown algae as well as in red algae. Clear? So, phaeophyce possess the pigments chlorophyll A, chlorophyll C, carotenoids, xanthophyll as well as your fucoxanthin, which is brown in color. The brown algae, they also vary in color to different shades. Okay, they also vary in different shades. For example, they vary in color from olive green to various shades of brown depending upon the amount of xanthophyll pigment as well as depending upon the amount of fucoxanthin pigment, okay, present within them. So, generally the brown algae, they differ from species to species. The brown algae, they differ from species to species according to their pigments which is present within them. As you saw that the green algae, they appear green in color, grass green in color, and species to species it differs, their color differs. In brown algae also species to species, okay, their color differs from olive green to the brown depending upon their pigment, xanthophyll pigment as well as fucoxanthin pigment. Their reserve food is complex carbohydrates in the form of laminarin and mannitol, or we can call it as laminarin starch and mannitol. As in the previous board you saw that reserve food of green algae is generally starch, okay, starch. Here it is laminarin or laminarin starch and mannitol, clear, and mannitol. The vegetative cells have, okay, the vegetative cells have a cellulosic word. cellulosic wall. As I had told you before that all those green algae, brown algae, red algae, they are one type of plant cells. Their cell wall, they do have the cellulose. Okay, their cell wall is composed of generally cellulose as they are plant cells. Apart from that, from green algae to red algae to brown algae, some extra components are present in their cell wall which differ from all those algae. Okay, so in green algae you studied that in the inner wall we see cellulose, in the outer wall we see algin. So in brown algae, here you take it is cellulose. In the outer wall you will see algin. In the outer wall you will see, in the brown algae's outer wall you will see algin is present. Just like that in green algae pectin is present. So in brown algae algin is present, okay, in the outer wall of the cell wall of the algae. Okay, clear. And the reserve food material is laminarian starch or mannitol. They usually are covered on the outside by a gelatinous coating called algin. It is the outer coating of the brown algae or phaeophyce. Clear? Their protoplast contains plastid vacuole nucleus. It means inside the brown algae we can see plastids are present. Plastids, it means they do have the chloroplast, they do have some other pigments. Okay, they do have vacuole for storage purpose and they do have nucleus which is controlling all the activities. That's why nucleus is otherwise called as the brain of the cell, because it controls all the activities of the cell. The plant body is usually attached to the substratum. Oh, it has given an example of a phaeophyce. Okay, let's take an example of phaeophyce. Okay, think it is a fucus. Okay, think it is a fucus or brown algae. Let's think it is a fucus. Diagram of a fucus or brown algae. In brown algae or in fucus, consider this fucus. It is their plant body is divided into mainly 3 compartments. Okay, one is holdfast, second is their stipe, and third is their fronds. Okay, here you can see the holdfast. Second you can see the stipe. Okay, on third you can see the frond. Holdfast, stipe, frond. The complete plant body is divided into 3 categories. Is your holdfast, stipe, frond. Then first look into what is holdfast. The holdfast term is not new for you. In algae, in green algae, just like in your Odogonium, you have already known that what holdfast means. Holdfast is just like a completely anchoring structure, or what is its function? It helps in the attachment. Okay, it helps in the attachment of the organism so that the organism won't flow away. Okay, as they are found in water currents, as they are found in flowing water, so the holdfast is a structure for attachment. Okay, clear? So in brown algae you will also see holdfast. Okay, holdfast for attachment purpose. Then upper area of the holdfast you will see stipe. It is residing from the holdfast to the frond area. Okay, it is the connecting link between the frond and the holdfast. And here you will see frond. Okay, in brown algae you will see frond. Do you know frond? What is frond? Frond is a completely slippery structure. Okay, slippery. ଯେତେବେଳେ ତୁମେ ତାକୁ ହାତକୁ ନେବ ତୁମେ ଦେଖିବ କି ଏଇଟା ପୁରା ସ୍ଲିପ୍ କରିଯାଉଛି ଯେମିତି ହେଲା, ଚିପଚିପା ସ୍ଲିପ୍ କଲା ଭଳିଆ ତୁମକୁ ଷ୍ଟ୍ରକ୍ଚର ଲାଗିବ, ବିକଜ ଅଫ୍ ଦ ଜିଲାଟିନସ୍ ମ୍ୟାଟ୍ରିକ୍ସ ପ୍ରେଜେଣ୍ଟ ୱିଦିନ୍ ଦ ଷ୍ଟ୍ରକ୍ଚର. ଓକେ, ଦ୍ୟାଟ୍ସ ୱାଇ ଦେ ଆର୍ ସ୍ଲିପରି ଇନ୍ ନେଚର. ଓକେ, ତ এইগুড়া जो देखुच सेगुड़ा हूँ वन टाइप ऑफ फ्रंट. ओके, फ्रंट तुम fucus, when you will look into the structure of a fucus, they generally look like this. Okay, I am drawing a fucus structure. Okay, I am drawing a fucus structure. This is a fucus plant body. Okay, it is holdfast, it is type, and these are the elongated structures, the elongated, slippery and the pointed structures, they are called the fronds. And the fronds in the upper area, they are bifurcated. Okay, they are divided. Okay, bifurcated. And in reproduction, and those pointed areas, they are called as conceptacle. And when those conceptacle, they bear the gametes, they bear the sex organs, they are otherwise called as the receptacle. The conceptacles, they are generally one type of cavity or the pointed areas which is present in the front, but when they bear the sex organs, they are generally called as the receptacle. Clear? And in between the fronds, some air bladders, in between the fronds, some air bladders are present. Here it has written glass bladders, or it is completely equal, gas bladder or air bladder, it is equal. Okay, equal term, air bladder. And why there is air bladder? Why? The Phaeophyci of some species have air bladder in their bodies or gas bladder in their bodies for floating purpose, so that they can float in water. Okay, in aquatic plants, you might be thinking there is aerenchyma tissues. What is the main function of the aerenchyma tissue? Aerenchyma, you see, they help in floating purpose. Here air bladder, they also perform the same function, they help in floating. Clear? So this is the structure of a Phaeophyci or a brown algae or a fucus. You see that their plant body is generally divided into three parts, and what are they? They are the holdfast, which has generally the function, which has generally the purpose for holding or for attachment in a substratum, and there is another area for what is called eustrife. It extends from the holdfast to the main frond area. Okay, and the upper area, the frond, which is completely a slippery structure because of the gelatinous matrix is present, because of the mucilage, substance is present in the fronds, that is why they appear very slippery, and when we touch them, they are also very slippery to our hand. Okay, they will slip in our hand because of the gel like structure or because of the mucilage structure present within them. And apart from that, in the frond, we see some air bladders or some gas bladders are also present, and those gas bladders or air bladders are present for floating purpose, helping the plants in floating. Clear? So this is the plant body of your Phaeophyci. Okay, we took an example of fucus and we discussed. Okay, clear? So let's take about, or let's look into the reproduction of the Phaeophyci or reproduction of the brown algae. Okay, we studied here the complete Phaeophyci. Okay, let's look into about their reproduction, and their reproduction, they can be also done by fragmentation as like in your green algae. So in our next session, we will completely discuss about the reproduction of the brown algae as well as the rhodophyci or the red algae. Here we studied in this class about the green algae completely, your chlorophyci completely, as well as what examples are present within them, and the brown algae or Phaeophyci completely. In next class, we will study about the reproduction of the Phaeophyci as well as the red algae. So until then, students, revise and study well. Bye.